This is Coda Radio, episode 90 for February 24th, 2014. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, GoDaddy, Ting, and DigitalOcean. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week for 90 weeks in a row, ladies and gentlemen, it's our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Misa
Yeah, there he is. Now all the emails have been answered. There was some plight in the Coda Radio audience when Jar Jar, I guess he was on break. He has that written into his contract. You know, you would not believe that man has a legal team. I guess you might. You know, he's a big Star Wars big shot, so I guess it's not too surprising. But that guy. And all we do is you tell him to do the intros. It's not like it's that big of a deal, but he needs vacation. He needs his time off. Well, we have a good episode today, Mr. Dominic. We both have still a little bit of a winter cold, but that's not going to stop us for episode 90. 90 is going to be a fun episode. Florian, I guess, and I'll have to ask him when he gets on. Motlik, I'm probably getting that wrong, but he is the CTO and co-founder of a really cool site called Codeship, and we're going to chat with him later today about what they're doing and about how they're kind of changing up the game and automating a lot of my old job too, I might say.
Now, anything that can really hurt IT admins it's just fantastic.
Oh, come on now. I'm supposed to be representing my people.
I'm just playing with you. I love you, Chris. Come on.
I know. Well, hey, so we got some good feedback to get to first before we get to our chat with Flo. But one thing, I just have a quick coffee radio update. It won't be a long one this week for those of you. We finally got an email in from somebody who said, "Okay, I'm done with the coffee talk," which was to be expected. It's been a few weeks, and it shattered my expectations that the audience was for once in consensus on a topic, and I'm glad. That was really messing with my whole world.
Oh, I'm sure.
But for those of you who have taken to brewing your own coffee, I wanted to link you to an image I came across this week. I'll have it in the show notes, the top of the follow-up section. The technique of brewing control. Yeah, that's right. It's a coffee brewing control chart, and it gives you your amount of coffee to water ratio and how strong or bitter your coffee is going to be. And you can follow this to get the perfect cup of coffee. And the thing I find interesting about this is one of the things that I've been experimenting with, because, I mean, to tell you, this is a huge jump for me, right? Because I'm coming from the whole K-cup world to, just crap coffee you buy from the grocery store and then just put it in a little paper thingy and drip for a while. And it was fine, and I would put a bunch of hemp milk in there and it would taste fine. But one of the things I never really grokked with either one of those setups is the fine-grained control of like how strong a cup of coffee I want and like how flavorful I want it versus whatever else. So like today I had like a half cup. And it's nice to be able to have like direct control over that ratio, so this chart helps you do that. So there you go. I'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Very good.
Tell you what, I'm just digging that coffee. All right, Mr. Dominic, are you ready for our first bit of feedback this week?
Yes, I am.
Okay, this one comes in from Russell, who's trying to make some early career decisions. And we have a contingent out there of audience members kind of in his spot. He says, "Hey, guys, I'm just about to start my final year of my CS degree. I spent the summer interning at IBM, and they've offered to keep me on part-time while I'm at uni. The experience has been good, and I quite like it there, but I've been missing having the free time to work on my personal projects. The extra experience would be good and the money is nice, but I can't help but feel like I'd learn more by working on personal stuff. Do you have any advice?" With all generic compliments about the show, Russell. What do you think, Mr. Dominic? Should he hunker down and do school and a job, or should he sort of go free willy and jump over that rock face and work on whatever the hell he wants?
You know, I think it's going to depend for everybody, and I hate that wishy-washy answer. I would say I would definitely go for a job because the things that you probably don't like about the job are helping you become a better developer. But I'd also say, I mean, can you carve out 2 hours a week to just do some freewheeling, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of my take on it is like, it is hard to have your cake and eat it too, but at that job experience on at a company like IBM too, that's good on the resume. I mean, there's a lot of good things about that. Plus having a little extra cash is good too. So, and also I kind of feel like if you're really passionate about something, you'll probably find the time to even when you're working and going to school. I know that's hard, and it might be a lot less than you'd like, but you'll probably still find a way to make it happen. So I'm kind of leaning towards taking the job with the consideration of, if you really think you've got something you really want to work on that could make you some money down the road, then maybe it's worth reconsidering. I don't know, Russell. That's a good question. Let us know which direction you go. Both Mike and I think are leaning saying, take the IBM job for now.
You could go work at IBM. It's a nice place.
Yeah, and like Mike said, you'll get some good methodologies while you're there, and some good people experience, and all those things are beneficial. It's not just the coding stuff. So I think that's a good one. All right, so we have a voicemail to get to, but before we play that, I think I'll say thanks to Ting this week, so that way we have some room when Flo joins us in a little bit. Now, what is Ting? Ting is my mobile service provider, and I'll tell you why. It's no BS mobile service, no contracts. That means no early termination fee. But the part that really gets me jacked up, I really like this part, is you only pay for what you use. So Ting takes your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. Whatever bucket you fall into, that's what you end up paying at the end of the month. So for example, for me, I'm heavier on the data, a little bit on the texting, because there's a few things that still text my actual number. And I really don't use the voice a lot. So for 2 lines, I'm paying about $35 a month. Now you think about that. That's a Nexus 5 and an HTC One for around $30 a month. Here's how you get started. Go to coderradio.ting.com. Ting is also probably the leader. I can't think of anybody that does customer service better than Ting. You can call them at 1-855-846-4389. Try it right now. They're open right now. 1-855-846-4389, and a real person answers the phone, and that person is empowered to solve your problem right then and there. If you're working in a team, if you have family members, that kind of peace of mind is invaluable. On top of that, if you're kind of like me, where you just prefer to be able to log in and do it online, disable a line, set up call forwarding, check my minutes, pay a bill, transfer a number, transfer a phone. They have an amazing control panel. Their dashboard is simple, it's intuitive, but yet it's fully functional, and they've paired it with Android and iOS apps where you can also manage the device from there. So it's really about giving you full control, but making the process simple enough that you don't have to worry about it. Every Ting plan includes hotspot and tethering. When you buy a Ting device, you own that device outright, so that completely flips the value system, where you are encouraged to keep a device and get the full life out of it, since you're not paying into a subsidized device that's losing value the longer you have it, even though you're continuing to pay into its original price. That whole model is gone. Ting also just recently lowered their data rates, so you might want to go over to coderradio.ting.com and try out that savings calculator and see how much you would save. And don't forget, Ting also has that early termination relief program. If you're going to get a new phone, just go over to Ting, grab your phone, port your number, and then submit your ETF claim to Ting, and they'll pay you up to $75 per line that you had to get canceled. Seriously, it's time to get started. Go over to coderradio.ting.com. That lets them know you heard about it here on the Coder Radio program, and you appreciate their support of the Coder Radio show. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Coder Radio program and their support of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. Been happy with my Nexus 5 too. I really recommend it. You can get it directly from the Play Store, guys. You don't have to get it from Ting if you don't want to. Just order your Nexus 5, then order your Ting SIM, and Bob's your uncle. And they have a fantastic how-to section on their website that walks you through all of it. Or you can buy it directly from Ting as well. It's a pretty cool way they do it, and they're really just about whatever's going to make you happier. All right, well, we got a voicemail from Rick. I think this might be our first voicemail too, which is super awesome. So go ahead, Rick.
Hey, Michael and Chris. Hope you guys are doing well. My question is related more towards software as a business. I'm a current CS undergraduate in the U.S. Since I completed some of my programming courses back in high school, now I'm left in a weird situation that I need some input on. With only 1.5 years left towards graduation, I'm currently able to take on some clientele work, but I'm not sure on the legalities on doing so. I know that Mike was a big fan of contracts and bids, but where would I be able to create or buy one of these contracts to offer to my clients? I know that a handshake and a smile will go a long way in the IT field, but in software it's much different since we are actually creating a product, not deploying one. Looking forward to hearing you guys' reply. By the way, great show. Keep up the good work. Many thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for sending in a voicemail. He just sent that in as an attachment. And what was great about Rick is he covered his bases. He sent a text version and he attached the WAV file. So whichever works best for us. But that was awesome. And since both Mike and I have wrecked throats this morning, it was great to have somebody else talk. So, I props to Rick for thinking of this before it's too far. Before he's too far down the line. So what do you think about getting started with that whole contract thing? That sounds like, when you don't know a lot about it, that sounds like a massive thing to figure out.
Yeah, that can definitely be a massive thing to figure out. I would just add though, unfortunately, you definitely need it. Now, your contract can be super simple, right? Especially it sounds like you're kind of in school, you're going to be doing probably small projects. It could just be payment terms, termination terms, and what exactly the project is.
Pretty simple then. Don't need to overthink it too much, at least to get started.
Right, you don't need to.
That's probably the safer way to go, isn't it? Keep it simple so that way you don't create some sort of loophole that you get yourself trapped in or something.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to use faux legalese if you're writing it yourself.
Yeah. And in fact, the client might appreciate just a simple, clear, easy to understand contract because that honestly is easier for them to trust too.
Exactly. I mean, that's when I did side work in college, that's how I did it. It was like a 1-2 page contract just describing what they wanted, payment terms, and that
sort of outlining the expectations and what you're going to try to do for them and what they're expecting from you. And would you put in something like payment terms in there, like say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's really that's the part you care about, right? When payments are due, and if they're not on time, which you'll find
happens all the time,
is common. What happens, right? How does that change the expectation? Does that change deliverables? Things like that.
Right. Very good. Well, there you go, Rick. Good luck with that, and I'm glad you're thinking of that now. Okay, our one of our last bits of email this week, Voldly writes in, and he says, thanks for the reply last week about Scala. Hey, Mike, could you talk about the process you use for building companies' private projects, i.e. not the ones you do on contract? You mentioned agile development. These are good while working for clients. How would you recommend a small company or a group of developers go through the process of building a software product? So I think he's talking like internal methodologies. Do you follow a rigid process for an internal project?
We do. We're trying.
It's an evolving thing, I take it.
Yeah, so the process really should be the same, right? The only difference with the client project is you have all the, I mean, if you think about it like programming, all the escape paths for if they don't pay you on time.
Yeah.
An internal project, the escape path is if we're way above budget.
Right. Yeah, right. The internal run cost.
Really, I think agile or some sort of process really isn't about protecting yourself from the client. It's about making sure you get a quality software project on budget and on time. So to say that you wouldn't do that for an internal product doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Right.
Now, I would certainly agree that with internal projects, I'm probably a little more experimental than I am with clients. But yeah,
that's your chance to, really. Why not?
Right. Yeah, because there's not a lot of risk. I mean, the process is about the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
About the same with some allowances for experimentation. Might
exactly.
Be yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I have a quick shout out to a cool project that was linked by Kunda Cool, and I think he's in our IRC today too, and he put it in the subreddit over at coderradio.reddit.com. Yeah, did you know we have a subreddit? coderradio.reddit.com. And he links to a web-based emulator. It's assembler. It's like an online tool for students to learn the assembly language. It's called YASP, Y-A-S-P, and it looks pretty neat. Oh my gosh. I just loaded the webpage for the first time, and it's super cool. Oh my gosh, this is actually really, really neat. So you can find the actual interactive tool at demo.yasp.me, and this is amazing. So you gotta if you've been interested in playing with assembly, go to demo.yasp.me or click the link in the Coder Radio subreddit. That is so hardcore. I love these browser-based environments now. This is very cool. So anyways, that's pretty neat. And thanks to Kinda Cool for sending that in. Real quick, before we get to our guest, I want to thank GoDaddy.com. Go over to GoDaddy.com and take advantage of the $2.95 offer code they're bringing out I think for probably like the next week. I think it's only got a little bit of life left. You can use the promo code 295CODER when you check out. GoDaddy has been a longtime sponsor of the Coder Radio program, and when you get a .com at these prices, you got to pull the trigger. I mean, you really do, because this is essentially a part of the real estate on the net. If you got a project idea you've been kicking around for a while and you think you know the name, or if you got a blog, or even if you want to just take advantage of the URL redirection services that GoDaddy makes super simple, that promo code is going to get you a .com for $2.95. That's cheaper than an app, son. $2.95, or it's definitely cheaper than an in-app purchase. Dang it! Use the promo code 295CODER when you check out to get the .com for $2.95. There are some restrictions. You can find out more on their website, and I believe additional .coms are $9.99 per year. So that's still a really, really great deal. I mean, $2.95 is outrageous, but even $9.99 is still a great deal. And you get your first .com for $2.95. And then you get the additional .coms for $9.99. So go over to GoDaddy.com to grab that. It's a fantastic value. And the best part about ordering over at GoDaddy is they are the gold standard in domain name registrars. They're the world's #1 domain name registrar. You're working with a client, you're working with a group, you're working with a project, or you just want something you can buy and then come back in a few years and still know you're going to be able to log in and access your account and set up your domain. That's why you go to GoDaddy. So go over to GoDaddy.com, use the promo code 295CODER before you check out. Get your first .com for $2.95. $2.95. Get additional .coms and domains for $9.99. It's a pretty great deal. So thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. All right, Mr. Dominic, before we bring Flo on, I want to head over to Codeship.io, where they've got a great site. Wow. Whoa. I'm guessing that's your phone.
Yeah, always.
It sounded pretty weird through the mic. So Codeship is continuous deployment made easy, and they have a video over at Codeship.io, and I thought we'd play this so that way we all kind of have a little bit of context of what Codeship does before we bring Flo onto the show, and then we'll chat with him. Everybody will kind of be on the same page. Here it comes.
Ahoy and welcome aboard the Codeship. The Codeship is a hosted continuous integration and continuous deployment platform. The Codeship runs your software tests on fast servers in a secure environment. If all your tests pass, the Codeship automatically deploys your code for you. This saves you a lot of time. Instead of manually testing and deploying your code over and over again on your own computers, you can focus on improving your product. On the Codeship, you can connect your GitHub and Bitbucket repositories and run tests for various programming languages and frameworks. The Codeship can deploy your application to Heroku, EngineYard, and many other platforms. You can set up these deployments with literally a few clicks. Should your tests fail, the Codeship notifies you and your teammates. A simple email or a message in HipChat, Campfire, or any other group chat will let you know if something is wrong with your application. Give the Codeship a try. Setting up continuous integration and continuous deployment only takes 3 minutes.
Well, I'm really happy to welcome Flo to the show. He is the CTO and one of the founders of Codeship. Flo, welcome to Coder Radio.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
When I hear Codeship, I think of sort of taking the role of the ops guy, where he takes up the code, he deploys it on the server for the developers, he gets it all set up for them, then they come and test on it, and if they say, okay, it's great, now push it to production, and then he pushes it from the test server to the production system, and then it's up on it, it's finally online, it's made public. Am I following sort of the basics of how Codeship works? Is it kind of replacing that process?
Yes, in a sense. In general, automation in general is replacing that process. So, if you use Codeship or not, or whichever, our opinion is that every step, especially in deployment, should be fully automated. So there shouldn't be any, except for like maybe triggering the build or triggering the deployment, that can be done by a human person. But then everything else should be totally automated, because it's a tedious process. So much can go wrong so easily. So at least like that first step of automating every single deployment step. So it's also like when you automate everything and it's just a no-brainer, it's just one script you call, then you just do it more often because like you've done it 5 times yesterday or maybe 3 times today. So why not a 4th or a 10th time today? I think that doing that automation as a first step is super important. And then, of course, services like ours and Codeship just makes it easy. You don't have to run your own infrastructure anymore. You don't have to deal with that. And I think also because you specifically like about the IT admins and stuff and replacing them, I think that like the stuff that we specifically replace for them is probably not the stuff that they really like in their hearts really want to work on.
Oh, I can tell you from experience, that's true.
Yeah. Like setting up your own test infrastructure, that's not fun.
It's tedious. It's tedious.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And I think I like the idea of, the approach that Codeship would be taking would sort of have a reproducible setup and environment, right? So I go up there and I say, okay, I have a Python project. I sign up now. Do I create an account on Codeship and then I connect it to a GitHub or Bitbucket account and can they pull back and forth from that?
Exactly. So you can log in through OAuth from GitHub. So you're logged in one click, and then you select which kind of repository you want to use, so either GitHub or Bitbucket at this point. Select your repository, give us your test commands that you want to run, and that's it basically. From that moment on, whenever you push to GitHub or Bitbucket to any feature branch, anything, we'll automatically start a new build. I think especially for test infrastructure, one of the hard things is that typically like old artifacts are left behind, the database isn't in a consistent state, or something stays back on the system, or somebody updates some kind of dependency that you didn't know because there's also a staging system. I mean, I ran through all of this, and I mean that was the reason why we came up with the idea, and we started building that is because it's been so hard and so tedious to run your own systems, and somebody like as soon as you give access to that system for somebody else, it'll be used for 26 other things that you really don't want on their system.
Yes.
And it's in our case, like we give you I think what is really important, a clean virtual machine. It's the same one every time. That is completely, nothing is left back except for like we can cache dependencies so that it's just a little faster. But even if there's something, like we can remove that cache and you're at a completely fresh and clean slate. There can be nothing left behind. So I think that's something to be able to reproduce problems, to really have a consistent state is super important, because it just removes a couple of possible errors that are just annoying and where you have to go in and debug stuff. And just by removing that kind of error completely, it's just easier and nicer to work.
So say I'm running my project through Codeship and there's a problem and it doesn't build properly. What kind of tools or analytics are available to me to sort of track down the issue?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, you can just SSH into it. So there we have a debug feature.
Okay.
So you can just, for any build you want to have, you just click the debug button on the bottom of the page, and about 20 to 30 seconds later, you'll get the SSH command that you put in. So you give us basically your SSH key, your public key. We'll put that in, so it's totally secure. Only you can get in. And so this way you can just connect to the virtual machine and just do anything you like. Basically, it's up for an hour then.
Okay.
And then you can just run any kind of commands. You can even, like what some people do to debug stuff, is even like do an X forward and see the Firefox really running on their own system and see exactly the interaction, even though it's running on our system. Then, of course, I mean, we're pretty big on support. So if people write us, we're very happy to look into stuff and help them.
That's awesome.
Obviously, because that's, I mean, we're a service after all, and we want to make this easy. And we have a lot of experience with problems that just happened in the past where we can get there easily. And we've also, like 2 months ago, we launched something where we automatically, so after each build, and if it fails, we scan the log for specific error messages that we know that happened in the past, and automatically like show you the correct help page or link to the help page or something, how you can debug that. That's typically for stuff where we can fix it. Because it's not, so it's something in the code, but we've seen it so many times that it happens. Especially for teams that don't have CI or then move to a CI system. There's just a couple of setup steps that can go wrong. So we try to like give you the information as early as possible what the problem is. So you can
now, Flo, not to interrupt you. you mentioned CI several times, and I think some folks in our audience might not be as hip.
Sure.
Can you just very quickly take a detour and kind of go into the basics of, I'm assuming you mean continuous integration, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So basically the two main things we're solving is continuous integration and continuous deployment. So continuous integration basically means that whenever anyone in your team changes any part of their code base and pushes it to their repository, an automated system should run all the tests, all the unit tests, all the integration tests, everything necessary to determine if that build or if that change impacted anything else. So the nice thing there is that you know very quickly and very easily if something is a problem. Mm-hmm. And if that happens on a feature branch, you can fix that on the feature branch, don't impact the master at all, and just everybody's happy. Oh. And so, but the important step is that it has to be automated because so as developers, or as humans, we don't we like to think we'll run the tests every single time,
yes.
But we won't. And it shouldn't you shouldn't have to. So for example, our workflow is we typically we code a bunch of things and a couple of features or very small things, even in a feature branch, and then push constantly. We'll push, we won't wait for the CI system until the feature is done or anything, but push continuously all throughout the day, whenever something small is ready, just to be sure, if all the changes I did, do they impact anything else on any other part of the system? So I can, while I'm still coding on that feature, take that feedback back and put it in. Because we've seen the problem is that if you code on your local system and then at the end of the day push in there, right, and then the build fails, or you go to lunch and the build fails and then you have to get back in again. But if you do that constantly, you're getting feedback all the time. So during your development but the problem is running your tests in your local system just puts a lot of stress on the system while you're developing it. So you don't really want to do that.
Sure.
So you want to have some other system to take care of that.
So it sounds like that would help catch a lot of snags when you're working with a group of people where you have different folks working on different aspects of a project. But, I think I look at a lot of things from the client services relationship perspective. And to me, this also sounds like a system that would give a independent developer or a very small development shop tools to sort of scale up to a much larger capacity because they could sort of deliver a little bit more solid of a product even as a small team. So do you find mostly that large teams that have maybe a little chaos involved are using Codeship, or is it more on the smaller, leaner development shops that just sort of need additional help to deliver the expectations their clients have?
Yeah, so I think it's our current customers are typically small to medium-sized companies or agencies, simply because that was our first focus also in all of our marketing and how we approach that. I think that especially smaller shops, it's a lot easier for a lot of them just to get testing in, I think, than in larger engineering organizations. There's in larger teams or in larger companies, what we've seen, there are always teams who do testing and who do maybe continuous deployment at this point, but it's hard to move from that one team into every team in the company. And I think that in smaller teams, just this happens a lot quicker when just they have a small side project, do TDD and then, or so test-driven development, and move that to the rest of the company. That happens pretty quickly because you see that so for example, in our case, so we define tests. So testing is not to make developers happy or development more productive, but to get happy users. Because if you have automated tests, then you can just push all the time, release new features or do changes in your application, which makes users happy. And on the other hand, you don't constantly kill your application, which also makes users happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think approaching it from that way also makes it super easy to sell that to the business side of the company. That it's we're not testing because as a developer, I like to do testing. We're really testing to make our customers happy and in the end make more money from it because we build a long-term and stable product. And I think that's something that is just probably in smaller companies, it's just a little easier to sell. And it's a smaller organization. You need fewer people to convince them that that's the way to go. But I think that a lot of large companies have, and there is the Googles and the Facebooks who totally follow in that and who've built huge test infrastructure. But I think that a lot of companies who are just starting out, trying it in smaller groups, I think mobile is a big step there.
Yeah.
Where a lot of teams where just mobile are, from the teams we've talked to, typically external developers that they get on board, typically more agile, come from an agency background maybe. So they bring in newer practices into the teams. Like you see how that works, and then that gets to the rest of the company. I think that's an approach that's, at least we've seen and we've talked to people who've used that approach to bring it into bigger companies.
One thing that that Mike and I have talked a lot about is trying to streamline, standardize, and automate the testing process. So when I hear something like this, it almost sounds a little bit like magic. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the technologies that I might recognize that are being used on the back end to make this happen?
Sure. So in general, so we are completely on Amazon, so completely EC2 based. We have our Rails application on the front end side. So what we call our mothership is Rails application. And we on the backend side, we use larger instances. So some of the largest instances that compute optimized instances that Amazon has, and then do with Linux containers. So for every build, basically, we start a new container.
Okay.
That is just clean in that sense. And we use that ephemeral containers. So once the build is done, it's just like everything is removed. So just on the right, we have a temporary overlay file system, basically, that's done by those LXC scripts in Ubuntu. And just there is a new virtual machine or new container for every build. And then we use Ruby basically to drive those containers, SSH into them, run commands, and all that stuff.
And I've noticed, too, you guys have integration with a lot of notification systems. So if I'm understanding the pipeline correctly, I push up my code, it gets tested, I could actually have Codeship deploy it, right? And then like ping like the GitHub status API or ping my Campfire project, right? Am I understanding that that's from end to end, it can actually deploy to production and then let me know it's happened?
Exactly. So we have a lot of integration with different deployment providers. So we started with Heroku basically, but now have Engine Yard and Google App Engine and tons of others. And you also you can also just run your own scripts. So those integrations are just a nice UI on top of specific commands we just run for you then. But you can just run your own stuff as well. So you can deploy anywhere. I think that's something that is, so with the deployment pipelines and like having, so for example, a lot of teams ask us how to do, like, for example, deploy your into staging and how to deploy to production and how to set that up in the best way and what our workflow is. And I think that, so we push like our master to production immediately without like any integration, so completely continuous deployment. But I think a lot of teams want to have like some manual step in between. And so setting up different branches, so having your master branch deployed to your staging environment and your production branch deployed to your production environment is a pretty good way to set that up, because in your Git repository, there is one head. There's one last commit on one branch. There can be, because I've seen that with if you have a UI and a commit a release or a publish button, there's always like the problem. So if I click this one and the other one, like for two different commits, which one gets deployed, and is it clear that like only these can get deployed, and like, how exactly does it work? And I think that by having that automated through the Git repository, where there is just like there can be no confusion what's the latest thing that is in the Git repository or on that specific branch. And then like merging is super easy or like deploying is basically a pull request on GitHub for us. And I think that a lot of people now started using that same kind of workflow as well. So it's super visual. You can have a code review before deploying, and just somebody else can just click the merge button and stuff goes out into staging, production, or wherever you need it.
So that's pretty awesome actually. So you actually, so I didn't know this. I know you can monitor a branch in GitHub and pull it out, but you can actually monitor and have Codeship respond to the merge being approved.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So the merge, if you merge on through a pull request, it's as if you would push through to that branch, and we get exactly the same kind of, or pretty much the same kind of request to the webhook from GitHub at that point. So we started.
So it has to be through the web-based pull request system. It can't be a local merge and then a push.
Sure. You can. It works absolutely the same. So you can do both things. We've just found that at least that's what we use. We like to merge through GitHub because we do a pull review, so code review for every feature branch. So the strict rule for us at Codeship is that you can't merge, or you can never push your own stuff into master It's always somebody else who can click that, and it's not a tech. So we don't really want to put that into like any kind of technical setup. We want everybody to be able to push to master, but we wanted to make it like a social thing that you don't do that. It's very, very, very forbidden. And I think like over the year, there's been like 2 exceptions to that, where we just wanted to have something go out quickly or quicker than through a pull request. And the last one has been quite a while ago, as far as I remember.
We use the exact same process. In fact, we do pretty much weekly code review just via pull requests.
Mm-hmm.
Very quick, very simple, and that's great that it integrates with that. Let me ask you, kind of steering the conversation to something. I'm moving towards TDD or really BDD, and I'm finding the process of conversion hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went through it. It's a tough sell to a lot of people, I think.
Yes.
What was your personal, let's say, path to enlightenment on this?
So I think for me it was, so I started back in university. So I worked on university projects, or like employed there, and worked on a couple of projects where testing and so code quality wasn't really that big of a deal for the people. So it wasn't really like it was a research project, and it wasn't like, the software was fine and it was well developed, good developers and all that stuff. But still, it was clear that like the workflow in general, and that it wasn't that big of a deal in that setup. And for me, like I always wanted to push, so I always like set up the CI servers then, and pushed for more like code quality tools, and pushed for like static analysis tools to check just because I think in general I'm a workflow person. Like I like proper workflow being in place, and I like to know like what's the next steps that are going to happen there, and what are we going through, so we don't like we define something that we think is the best way to do it, and then we follow through on that, because then we can't just do errors all the time. And I think that from that experience, it was for me, okay, I want to go more in that direction, and we did have tests and stuff like that, but it was like seeing how that evolved and seeing how that works in other projects, and just reading a lot about it was something for me that was really important. I thought that we should have that. And so basically when we started doing Codeship, so we started with doing, I wouldn't say test driven we always had tests, we always wrote tests, or I always wrote tests then, but I think that it got a lot stronger over time with test driven, where we really gained a lot of experience on how, like, what's the workflow that we liked. And in the beginning, I developed it for a while alone, and then we had more people coming in. And I think that especially as soon as you have the next developers coming in, then it's really important to get that workflow right, because a good workflow just makes good programmers really great, and a bad workflow just like takes the best programmers you have, makes them mediocre, and 2 months later they're gone because they just hate working like that. I think that really, really getting, and I mean we're a workflow company, so we like build technical tools for people who want to have a proper workflow. So obviously, like, I think workflow is important, but from my experience and from the people I've talked to, I think that's in software development, as soon as you grow the team, if you don't have the proper process in place, you're just not gonna get it. And I think that, and how to start testing, I think that the most important thing is to set up the whole workflow, like being able to, so that's what I've told a couple of teams, is just choose any kind of tool that you want to do testing with, and then set up a workflow so that these tests run automatically every time you push to your repository. And write the test that logs into your site. And they shouldn't, like, don't choose the tool that you're going to use in 2 years. Don't think about that. Choose the tool that you can write the tests in comfortably today, and write that one test, make sure it works.
Yeah.
And then make all the setup steps, like make sure that it works fine and that the tests run. And as soon as those tests run, then and the workflow is in place, then keep coding. Because as soon as you keep coding them, and that's been the feedback, or that's what I thought would happen, and then actually, like, people started, like, they had that one test. So for a new feature, so why not write a second test? And why not write the next test or the next?
Once you get that one started.
Absolutely,
Makes a lot of
and
sense.
you're done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that so for new things like starting like that, or like another thing that that I've written in a blog post a while ago, is I think that it's really hard. So testing should always be from top to bottom in terms of from the UI. So thinking in testing, like how would the user interact with that? And because then you like if you think that through and do like behavior driven testing, or even like if you just use Selenium or something like that, or like really, then you really think about the tests from the opinion of the users and start really high on top, and then go from that down into your system. And then, so I think that in the beginning, if there aren't any tests in a code base, it should be like, you should come down to what are the most important things that I want to have tested and that my users really need. So what we've kind of come up with is something where you get the team together in a room, and then basically everybody takes a sheet of paper and writes down their 10 most important workflows for the application. And in the best case, even in the like given when then syntax that like Cucumber or other things use, but whatever, just like the 10 most important things, most important workflows, most important processes in your app. And then when everybody has them down, like come together, put that list together, like make one big list of all those workflows. It's probably going to be like the same ones anyway, or a lot of the same ones. And then just like, what's the most important one? Write one test for that. And then do that for the like 10 most important ones, which like that can be done if you have the setup with one test done first. That can be done probably in a day or two. But you really have like super simple tests for the most important workflows where it just clicks through the application, says, okay, if I select this product and put it in here, can I click the buy button and will it show me the receipt in the end? Like if you have that set up and like at least that simple test there, and test like the login and like really your most important stuff, then you can be pretty sure that you're not going to kill at least those 10 most important workflows. And you can move from there. And I think that as developers, we like to, like when we think about a problem, we like to build it from bottom. Like we like to think like, what is all the things that I need on the bottom, so I can build on top of that and on top of that and on top of that, which like can be fine for developing. But I think for getting started with testing, this is totally hindering us, because we think about like what are all the 5,000 different situations that my application could be in. So I need to write a low level test for each one of those, and then like the next level, and then the next level. But then you're forgetting that actually you're writing the tests for the users to be happy and for your customers to be happy.
Right.
So that's and you're actually writing tests to make sure that your system is like works in every single detail, which is probably not what's gonna make your customers happy overall. Of course, like there need to be those tests at some point or in some fashion. But like the most important thing is, does login work? Because like they don't care why the login doesn't work. The important thing is the login needs to work. Absolutely. Or the buy button needs to work.
Yeah.
So you suggest kind of a small progression towards a test-driven way of doing things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's setting up your team, or I think in general, like setting up your team in a way that it's hard to even tell yourself why you don't write a test. So because you have all the tools in place, everybody knows how to write them. It's like it builds a kind of a social pressure for yourself, but also for the rest of the team. That, I mean, we put all of that work in place. We put all of that work in last week to put that workflow in place and put the testing tools in place. Come on, why aren't you writing a test when it only takes you a minute or two, or it takes you 5 minutes? Yeah. So I think that that's a nice, like you slowly build, like you put yourself in a place where you can't really justify to yourself why you don't do it, because you've invested some time already, but not a lot. Like it's not so much time that you wouldn't be able to do it like today or tomorrow. So you can get that done. But then next week, you already got it. So why not use it? Because you like, everybody knows that you should test. I mean, there isn't, or I think there are very few people who are of the opinion that you really should not test your software automatically. I think that fight has been pretty much settled.
Yeah.
So I think it's putting your organization in a place and like putting that understanding in the place. Like, why are we doing it? For whom are we doing it? And how easy? Like, it should be easier than. There shouldn't be the argument that we won't write a test because it's so hard and takes so long. If you like can take that argument away, then there really isn't any justification except for I don't like to.
I think kind of what you're explaining too, in a way, is a bit of a mental game. It's like totally. It's because it's not that big of a thing you have to bite off. Just start with, like you're saying, maybe the 10 most important aspects of it, or really just start with the first one and just get that first one done. Make sure login works. And that is a much easier concept for somebody to wrap their brain around and sort of assign a time value to it. But the other thing, going back to that whole client services relationship thing, is if something does fail, you could at least tell the client, well, we did develop a test for it, so we were checking. I think that's a brilliant way because, just some of the systems I've built in the past, it becomes like this massive task because, like you're saying, I'm looking at all 5,000 potential things that I would need to test for, and it's just so overwhelming, and the time commitment seems so great in that scenario that I honestly just avoid doing it altogether. But if I kind of refocused and just sort of pick the top one and really just, a little bit of a low-hanging fruit that I know I can get done, that sort of gives me a beachhead into there, and now it's a much simpler concept to sort of wrap my brain around. I really like that.
Yeah, and I think that has developed for us as well over time. So we're really strict about like code quality and testing at this point, but like we weren't when we started 3 years ago. So it's definitely something that built over time. And I think that's like you can push that time that it needs to develop, like to have that feeling of like it's really important and I can't live without it. It's not gonna happen in a week, and it's not gonna happen in a weekend workshop. That's just like you have to see it every single day, that it works, that it catches problems, that it really helps your team and makes you more productive and like your team and your company just more successful in the end. And I think that just is something that needs a little time and a little investment, but like small increments. So you're gaining value all the time, and you're seeing the value all the time. Yeah. And it's just a mental game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, Mr. Dominic, I want to just take a quick break right here because I know
let's do it.
One of the things that Codeship deploys to is our sponsor this week, and that is DigitalOcean. Now, friends, if you're not familiar with DigitalOcean, buckle up because you should be. DigitalOcean is simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Users can create a cloud server in 55 seconds. Now, that's users. See, when you're a pro like me, you can get it down to 47 seconds, or supposedly some folks in our audience who got it down to 44. I'm 47, they got to 44. They sent me a screenshot, so I have to believe it. But here's the best part. Pricing plans start only $5 per month. That gets you a rig with 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, CPU, and a terabyte. Yes, friends, a terabyte of transfer. And the best part is, DigitalOcean has data centers located in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. They have a simple interface with an intuitive control panel, which, by the way, power users can replicate on a larger scale with their straightforward API. Now, here's how you get started. Go over to DigitalOcean.com. Go grab yourself a machine and use the promo code CoderRadioFebruary. That's all one word, CoderRadioFebruary. That'll get you a $10 DigitalOcean credit. Now, if you grab the $5 rig like I've been using, that's going to get you 2 months of a DigitalOcean server. I have an Archbox up there right now that I just deployed Sticked to, which is an open source paste bin alternative that I've been playing with just for passing notes back and forth inside Jupiter Broadcasting and documenting certain things. And the great part is that it has syntax highlighting. It supports a lot of different languages. It lets me set a time expiration, so if I don't want the post staying up on the web to get indexed or something like that, I can have it pulled down. And DigitalOcean makes it so easy. Before I deploy anything new to my server, I just back it up using their awesome control panel, and then if something goes wrong, I can revert back to my image. Also, by the way, I can take those images and deploy future servers based on that one. They also have a bunch of ready-to-go droplets with Ubuntu and Docker and Linux containers, all these things that make it super easy. And when you can do things like connect to Codeship, and you really have a nice workflow. So go over to DigitalOcean.com, check them out. They've also got hourly pricing if you just need to test your app for a little while. We love them, been using them for months now. Mr. Dominic deploys a lot of his back-end infrastructure on DigitalOcean, and a lot of people in our audience are doing the same. Coder Radio February is that promo code to get a $10 credit so you can try out a DigitalOcean machine for a couple of months for free. And trust me, you'll just keep finding great uses for it. It has really been a big boost to my infrastructure to be able to just spin something up with great connection. They have a fantastic tier 1 bandwidth and those SSD drives. I just love it. And I got to say, KVM makes these machines just fly. The performance is astounding. So a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Go use that promo code CoderRadioFebruary to get a DigitalOcean droplet for 2 months if you get that $5 rig. It's a pretty nice combo. It's a nice setup. So I know, Mike, you probably got a couple more questions. I got a question that that I wanted to toss to Flo's way, just because it's a hard question, but I think a lot of people in our audience are probably thinking this in the back of their minds. Is it seems like Codeship could be a really handy tool, especially if you're doing a lot of rapid deployment. But the first thing I think of as an infrastructure guy is, what happens if Codeship goes down? And if you guys had problems with that, and it seems like maybe that's part of the reason why you're on AWS, is to have that pretty solid infrastructure flow. So what do you think about that? You guys are kind of in the middle of a workflow, so it's a pretty key role. You could, worst case scenarios, somebody can't deploy because maybe Codeship went down. So how do you guys sort of help prevent that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, as a workflow tool, it's super important to be up all the time. And I mean, that's super on our mind. And so I think that one of the most important, like from a infrastructure point of view, one of the most important things for us is to have every part of our infrastructure immutable, except for our database, because that's not possible. But from working on Heroku, where we can just, like, it's super easy to ship something new, and we don't have to like update any servers or can put servers into a bad state because of a bad deploy. But on Heroku, we just roll back and forth if we need. When we never had to roll back, thankfully. We always just push forward if that something happened. But that's been something that is really important for us. And we're longer term looking to build more on top of, for our front end, more on AWS itself, just to have replication in all different parts of the world, basically. So we really can't like do the Netflix model of you really can't go down. And so there's something that we definitely putting a lot of resources into now, even more so than in the past. Now that we've got a little more resources in place, and just to build that, because we want to be at the center of people's development workflow, and that needs to be super stable and up all the time.
Yeah.
And I think so. How we deal with that, especially on our test infrastructure, is we're as a big believers in immutable infrastructure. So basically, whenever we push a new code change to our GitHub repository, we use Packer. So that's, I don't know if you guys heard of that. That's from the guys from Mitchell Hashimoto, who did Vagrant. It's basically, you have a JSON config file and it builds a machine image. So for VirtualBox, for DigitalOcean, for AWS or any else. So basically, whenever we push to our repository, we build a new Amazon machine image, and then we can, from that machine image, start new service anytime. So what we also do, like we just activate or deactivate specific AMIs. So we say, okay, this one is the one that's now active, and we want the automatic scaling to only use that image, or so we can shut down other services that we don't want. And so if we deploy anything that is like slightly problematic, or if we see like there's some problem with it, it takes us one click to disable current machine. So if there's a fault in our AMI, and we have a large integration test suite that makes sure that everything is installed, all the databases are there, all the tools are there, and everything that's necessary. But then we can just go back with one click, basically, and we're back to a state where we knew that worked. Yeah. And because we didn't update, because we always started from that one AMI on Amazon, it's clear, like if it worked before, it's going to work again, because it's exactly the same files. It's exactly the same thing that's going to start up.
Yeah.
So that's been, for us, I think that's been super helpful. And I think that having something like that in place where and that enables us to really push a lot and push a lot of changes all the time into production, because we always know, like, going back to an earlier version, like, first of all, of course, we have tests for everything in place, and it's really deep tests there. But also that if anything goes wrong, it's probably, like, most customers will not notice, because it takes us like a minute or two at most to go back to a state where everything works.
That's nice. So if there is a boo-boo, it's a pretty quick revert back to a good working state.
Yes, absolutely. That's been super important from the beginning for us, because I think that as a small team, there is no, like, you need to be really, really fast. So you need to be able to like get that product market fit and really get the stuff that customers and users want out there. So you need to be really, really, really fast. But you can't be really fast if you don't have like the tests and the workflow and the rollback and everything in place. So if something goes wrong, you can just move back. And I think that's something that we really believe in very strongly. Wow. And to have every part of our infrastructure built in a way that we can go back and forth easily.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that. All right, Mr. Dominic, is there anything else we want to cover?
No, I think we should let Flo get back to work. I mean, the ship needs to stay afloat.
That's right. We don't want
terrible fun.
All right, so the site is codeship.io, and you guys can go check that out. They got a great video on their website too, which you can watch to see it all explained. Well, Flo, thanks a bunch for coming on the show today. It was a great chat with you and great insights on testing methodology, and it's really fascinating what you guys are working on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, you bet.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, keep us posted on how things go in the future, okay?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, and how do you pronounce the last name?
Motlik. So
Motlik. Okay.
Motlik, yeah.
I didn't get close, I don't think.
Pretty much. I think you went Motlik.
Dang it. Oh, man. Well,
but I heard that often, so that's a very typical mispronunciation.
Okay.
So you're super.
You're gracious.
Super close.
You're too gracious. All right, Flo.
You're too nice to him. Don't be nice.
You don't have to be. It's awful. Yeah. It's a horrible problem I have. All right. Well, thanks a bunch for coming on the Coder Radio program. We enjoyed our chat.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Dominic. Well, very good, sir. So, we need to get some emails in here because we always like to have folks' feedback. So if you have any comments on what we chatted about today with Flo or any other topics you want to ask us, send those in. You can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click on the contact link, and then choose Coder Radio from the drop-down. Fill in your form and send it in to us, or you can email us coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com. And I should probably give one last plug to that subreddit, coderradio.reddit.com. There we go. Any other business you want to attend to before we wrap up?
I think we're in a pretty good place to wrap. I think we have a lot of meaty information about TDD.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. All right, well, very good. It was great to chat with Flo, and we'd love to have you join us live so you can hang out in our chat room and interact with us and also help us name the show. Just go to jblive.tv on a Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. You can also go to jblive.info for the audio versions if you're in the car. Maybe you're sitting at a desk and they don't like you streaming video. That's another good way to go. Mr. Dominic, if I was going to send people your general direction throughout the week, if they wanted more Dominic, where would they go?
Oh, they might go to dominicm.com.
Could do that. Yeah, we'll also have links to our Twitter profiles in the show notes, and we'll have links to Codeship and some of the things we talked about, like Packer, in the show notes as well. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of Coder Radio. We'll see you right back here next week.